Welcome to our deep dive. This time it's into the world of big tobacco. It's a story a lot of people think they know, but we're going to unpack some surprising details. We're using the very first episode of the Wondery podcast, American Scandal, Big Tobacco. You see, back in the 1950s, smoking wasn't just common. It was. It was seen as cool, even healthy.
Yeah, it's crazy, right?
It was.
But there was this battle for truth brewing behind that facade.
Totally.
Yeah, and what's so fascinating to me is how this battle was shaped by individual choices and these moments of courage, often against incredible odds. Like imagine, it's 1953 and the heads of all the major tobacco companies, they're all huddled in this meeting at the Plaza Hotel. And there's this PR expert named John Hill, and he's laying out a strategy to combat a recent report linking cigarettes to cancer. And this isn't just some PR move. This is the beginning of a decade-long campaign of misinformation.
Wow, so what does he propose? How do you even begin to fight something like that?
Well,
He basically tells them to deny the science, create their own, scientific committee to just sow doubt. Here's the real kicker: target young people.
seriously.
Yeah, think about that for a sec. Teenagers, especially, they're so drawn to image and rebellion. If you can link smoking to coolness,
Yeah.
to figures like Marlon Brando, you could override those early concerns about health risks. And actually, this is a tactic that's still relevant today. Think about how products are marketed, how they try to tap into your aspirations or anxieties even.
It's true. That's a chilling thought. And it worked for a while. But let's fast forward to 1988. We meet Merrill Williams. He's a paralegal. That's someone who assists lawyers.
Yeah.
He's working for a firm representing Brown and Williamson, a big tobacco company. Now, you might picture this high-pressure environment,
Right.
but Williams describes a workplace more focused on leisure than law. It's wild.
It's like they felt untouchable.
Yeah.
Almost invincible.
Yeah. But then Williams stumbles upon a document from 1963. And get this, it admits not only the dangers of smoking, but also the addictive nature of nicotine. This is decades before these facts were widely accepted.
Right.
So internally, they knew the truth, but they continued to publicly deny it.
It's amazing how long they got away with that. It really makes you question who you can trust, right? But at the same time, there's this biochemist named Jeffrey Wigand. He joins Brown and Williamson in 1989. And he really wants to develop a safer cigarette. He was partly motivated by his daughter's health issues and the need to provide for her.
Yeah, this is where you see the human side of this story. Wigand isn't some crusading hero. He's just a scientist trying to do good work while supporting his family. But he quickly becomes disillusioned. He discovers that the company is manipulating nicotine levels. They're making cigarettes even more addictive. They're prioritizing profit over people's health. And they're willing to silence anyone who speaks up.
It's unbelievable. And Wigand does speak up. He confronts the president of Brown and Williamson directly, but it's a losing battle. He's eventually fired and forced to sign a confidentiality agreement, essentially gagging him.
Wow.
Think about the pressure he must have been under. He lost his job, he's got a family to support, and he knows the truth about a product that's harming millions.
That's a lot to carry around. This raises the question, what would you do in that situation? Would you risk everything to expose the truth, or would you prioritize your own security?
It's a tough call. Back to Merrill Williams for a moment. He's been secretly custodying those incriminating documents, becoming a whistleblower in the shadows. But it takes a toll. He loses his job and even suffers a heart attack.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
This is where personal experience fuels activism. Williams believes his heart attack is a sign, a divine push to keep fighting. He connects with a lawyer named Richard Scruggs. He's known for taking on big corporations. And they decide to sue Brown and Williamson for fraud.
Wow. And while all this is going on, there's Lowell Bergman, a producer for 60 Minutes. He specializes in investigative journalism. And he receives a mysterious crate of confidential documents from Philip Morris, another tobacco giant.
This is getting good.
Right.
These documents, they're potentially explosive, but they're also highly technical. Bergman needs someone to help him understand the science, someone with insider knowledge.
That's so interesting. It's like a puzzle, isn't it? All these pieces scattered around. And you wonder how they'll all fit together. Well, we'll start putting those pieces together next time in part 2 of our deep dive. It's like all these pieces are scattered around and you just wonder how they'll all fit together.
Right.
Well, let's start putting some of those pieces together now. Remember, Merrill Williams, our paralegal turned whistleblower. After his heart attack, he's driven by this sense of urgency to expose the truth. He's got these boxes of incriminating documents, but what can he actually do with them?
He needs someone who can really understand the legal implications. someone who can use those documents to make a real impact. That's where Richard Scruggs comes in. He's a lawyer known for taking on these huge corporations. And Scruggs sees this as a David versus Goliath battle, a chance to finally hold Big Tobacco accountable for decades of deception.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
They decide to file a lawsuit against Brown and Williamson, alleging that the company knowingly concealed the dangers of smoking and defrauded the public. And this case is groundbreaking
Totally.
because it challenges the industry's long-held shield of plausible deniability. Up until this point, Big Tobacco had always argued that smokers knew the risks and chose to smoke anyway. But Williams's documents completely blow that argument out of the water.
Exactly. The whole case really hinges on proving intent, demonstrating that the industry knew about the harms of smoking and actively worked to hide that information. And that's where those internal documents are so crucial. They provide the smoking gun, so to speak.
It's incredible. Now let's go back to Lowell Bergman, our 60 Minutes producer. He's got those Philip Morris documents. But he needs someone who can really make sense of all the technical jargon.
It's complicated stuff.
Oh, yeah. Someone who understands the science behind cigarettes and the inner workings of the industry.
Right, and that's where Jeffrey Wiggin comes in.
Yeah.
He's the biochemist who was fired from Brown and Williamson after raising concerns about nicotine manipulation. Bergman sees Wiggin as the missing piece of the puzzle. He has the inside knowledge and the scientific expertise to really help Bergman connect the dots.
I can see why Bergman was so interested in talking to him. So Wiggin agrees to be a source for Bergman's 60 Minutes segment, but there's a huge obstacle. He signed that confidentiality agreement when he left Brown and Williamson.
Oh, right.
And breaking that agreement could land him in serious legal trouble.
Yeah, this really highlights the power imbalance between individuals and corporations. Big Tobacco has an army of lawyers and a long history of using really aggressive legal tactics to silence their critics. They're not afraid to just bury their opponents in paperwork and legal fees, making it nearly impossible for anyone to challenge them.
So Wiggin is in a tough spot. He wants to tell his story.
Of course.
But he doesn't want to risk financial ruin or even jail time. And CBS, the network that airs 60 Minutes, is also feeling the pressure. They're worried about the potential legal fallout of airing Wiggin's interview.
I bet.
Yeah.
This isn't just a story about smoking anymore. It's about corporate power and the lengths to which companies will go to protect their profits.
Yeah.
Even if it means silencing those who speak out against them.
Makes you think, doesn't it? How many other stories like this are out there? How many people are silenced by fear or by legal agreements that just prevent them from speaking truth to power?
It's a sobering thought.
It is.
But it also underscores the courage of individuals like Wiggin and Williams, who are willing to risk everything to expose the truth.
Absolutely. It's amazing. This is where the story gets even more intense. You've got Williams and Scruggs fighting this legal battle. You've got Wiggin and Bergman trying to get the truth out to the public. And then you've got Big Tobacco using every tactic at their disposal to protect their empire. It's a real-life thriller playing out on a national stage. It's the classic showdown, isn't it? Like the underdog versus the giant corporation. The truth versus a carefully constructed web of lies.
It's a story as old as time.
And it's not just about winning or losing. This story raises questions about responsibility.
Oh, yeah.
About the choices we make when we're faced with tough situations, about the price of truth.
Right. Like, think about the ripple effects of all of this. Williams and Scruggs' lawsuit. If it's successful, it could force Big Tobacco to finally admit the harms of smoking and pay billions of dollars in damages. And Wiggin's interview on 60 Minutes, it could expose their deception to millions and millions of viewers, potentially changing public perception.
Yeah.
And even prompting government action.
Yeah, but those outcomes are far from certain.
Yeah.
Big Tobacco has a long history of using its vast resources to delay, obstruct, and just intimidate.
Yeah.
They're masters of legal maneuvering and public relations spin.
Oh, yeah. They're good at what they do. Their strategy actually shifts here. Instead of just outright denial, they start to sow doubt. They fund their own research. They hire all these experts to challenge the scientific consensus, and they create this aura of controversy around something that's actually pretty clear-cut. It's so smart. The tactic of manufacturing uncertainty, you see it all the time. Not just with tobacco, but with other issues like climate change or the safety of vaccines.
So how can you cut through all the noise? How do you know what to believe when you're being bombarded with all this conflicting information?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is.
Well, this story really highlights the importance of critical thinking. You got to look beyond the surface and examine the motivations of those who are presenting the information.
Yeah, you can't just take everything at face value.
Right. Who's funding the research? Who benefits from this message that's being spread? Those are the questions you should be asking yourself. And not just when it comes to tobacco, with anything.
Yeah.
Any information you encounter, especially now with social media and all the online echo chambers.
It's so true. You really have to be careful. And it's crazy to think that this entire deep dive has been based on just the first episode of American Scandal. The podcast actually goes on to explore all the legal battles, all the political maneuvering, and the devastating toll that smoking has taken on millions of lives. But even in just this first episode, you can see the power of individual action. You've got Merrill Williams driven by this sense of moral duty to expose the truth, even though it's a huge personal risk. You've got Jeffrey Wiggin wrestling with his conscience, knowing that speaking out could cost him everything. And you've got Lowell Bergman, the journalist, just relentlessly pursuing this story, determined to hold those in power accountable.
It's pretty inspiring. It's a good reminder that change doesn't just happen. It's made by individuals who are willing to stand up and speak out, even when it's scary. Even when it's dangerous. Think about the issues you care about, the injustices you see in the world. What role can you play in making a difference?
Sometimes it feels so daunting, like you're just one person up against the system that feels rigged against you.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But remember, every movement starts with individuals. It starts with awareness, with questioning, with refusing to accept the status quo.
It's true. And remember all the tactics we talked about, Big Tobacco's playbook. They're still using it today. You can see it in the way certain industries downplay the risks or deflect blame, the way they use marketing to create desire and to manipulate your emotions.
It's everywhere. So what can we do?
Be informed. Be critical. Be engaged. Don't just accept what you're told. Dig a little deeper. Ask the tough questions. And don't be afraid to challenge those in power. You never know. You might be the next Merrill Williams or Jeffrey Wiggin. And spark a movement for change.
That's a good point.
Even if you're not leading some national crusade.
Yeah.
You can still make a difference in your own little world. Talk to your friends and family. Share what you've learned. Encourage them to think critically about all the information they see.
Exactly. We started this deep dive by asking how a seemingly invincible industry like Big Tobacco could even be challenged. And I think the answer is in those individual stories, in the courage of people like Williams and Wiggin, and in the power of truth to just break through even the most carefully constructed facade.
It's a reminder that even when you're up against overwhelming power, the fight for truth is a fight worth having, and it's a fight that we can all be a part of.
Absolutely. That's such a powerful thought to end on. You know, as you go about your day-to-day, consider this. What are the battles for truth being fought right now, and where do you stand?